Vincenzo's Gold Crypto Investing. Remember to comment down below, subscribe to the channel, share it, and like it to help push us through the YouTube sphere. To get your once a day daily cryptocurrency XRP and monetary and fiscal policy videos you've come to expect, love, deserve, and need to manipulate and navigate these manipulated waters. And remember, you can use my Robinhood link below to trade all your favorite XRP, including crypto, for the cheapest, quickest, and easiest way, and they do have wallets to transfer. Also, I have a Coinbase link down below or in the pinned comments. And today we had a lot of activity in the markets as the Fed meeting recap. The Federal Reserve knocked interest rates down by a quarter basis point, and now it brings the target range to 4.25 to 4.5. The central banks revised the outlook rate cut in 2025, however, indicating there will be two reductions. This down from four forecasted, and that's why the stock market did collapse today and have one of its biggest down days in quite some time. Along with the gold market went down too. It took a big hit, but you would think that the gold market would respond because they're not going to lower interest rates as much. And usually lower interest rates would, in the short term, negatively affect the the overall prices, because the lower the interest rates go, usually it's negatively correlated where the higher gold would go. So I think gold will rebound in the next 3 to 5 weeks. But the stock market did go down because would the stock market will go up if the interest rates get closer to zero, because the cheaper money is to loan, the higher you can pump stocks, right? So even though they lowered it a quarter basis point, they've now cut in half their forecast where they were going to do 4 rate cuts next year, and now they're only talking about doing two. Uh, Down from 4 in September to 2 rate cuts now going into 2025 for all of next year. Jerome Powell said the central bank would be looking for progress on inflation, noting we have been moving sideways on 12-month inflation. I do believe inflation will continue to pick back up after it had its highest 4 years from 2020 to 2024 for any president. Accumulated inflation rate, if you add up all 4 years combined, I believe we're about 32 or 34%, which was the highest for any 4 year term for a president. Powell thinks that consumers are feeling the effect of high prices rather than of high inflation. Well, high prices are inflation, so that doesn't even make sense, because the price is going up is inflation, right? So that he's contradicting himself there. Powell thinks the consumers are feeling the effect of high prices rather than of high inflation. Well, high prices is the effect of inflation. So the prices rising is inflation. So I don't know what he's talking about there. Either he doesn't know what inflation is or he's playing stupid. And I think it's the latter. I think he's playing stupid. We understand very well that prices went up by a great deal and people really feel that. And it's prices of food, transportation, and heating your home and things like that. So the major things you need to live, you need food, you need heat in your home, and you need transportation, right? Now we have inflation itself is way down, but people are still feeling high prices. Again, those two things don't make sense. Inflation is down, but people are still feeling high prices because the inflation is still high. We had 34% rise in prices in 4 years, and now they're only going up at 3% a year. Well, they're not going down, so we didn't give back that 34%. And each year we're adding on 2 or 3 more% because the inflation is still there. You see, just because you go from a 9% for a year in inflation, and at the next year it's only up 3.5. Well, now in the last 2 years, you're up 9 plus 3.5. So you're up 12.5, if we can do math. The only way to get inflation to go down is if you have a uh, if it goes negative, if the inflation rate is negative 3.5, well, now prices are 3.5% cheaper than they were a year before. So if you had a 30% over 4 years, and then the fifth year you're down 3.5%, well, now you're only at 26.5, moving in the right direction. But just by lowering that, the rate of inflation from 9 to 2.5 or 3, you're still tacking on an additional 2.5, 3% each year. So if you had 2% a year in inflation, that's still over a 10-year span. 2 times 10 is 20. And then if you had a 30% move for 4 years, now you're at 50% for 14 years, right? So that's how they play stupid, as they've dumbed down the population that much. Fed Powell said that central bank is not looking to add Bitcoin to its balance sheet. That might be a reason why Bitcoin went down. We're not allowed to own Bitcoin. The Federal Reserve Act says what we can own, and we're not looking for a law change. That's the kind of thing Congress to consider, but we are not looking for a law change at the Fed. President-elect Trump embraced the crypto industry during his campaign and entertained the idea of potentially creating a strategic reserve of Bitcoin. Powell said that the Federal Reserve is keeping a close eye on the labor market. We do think the labor market is still cooling by many measures. He said before, uh, caveating, it's not cooling in a quick way or in a way that really raises concern. The Federal Reserve will look for further progress on inflation in 2025, given some stickiness, as they like to call it, in the year over year data that is concerning policymakers. So there's some news there on kind of how they talk to the American public like they're children and uneducated, which in many regards, at least in terms of inflation, the American public is very uneducated. They think greedy corporations and businessmen raise prices when that is not the case. The only people that can raise prices is the United States government by printing and expanding the money supply. Because when you expand the money supply and don't up the production of the goods to equal the expansion of the money supply, you get prices that rise, right? It's just the way it works. Uh, and if you look at the Bitcoin price, we did hit that 108,000. And we've been talking about if we didn't shoot straight up to our upper target, which I don't know where it went there, we had it at 113,000. Your initial support is down here at 89,879. And then your major support is down here at 74,002 and 23. And that would be where if you broke that, which would be from the top down, would be a healthy correction in a bull market of 31.69%. But if you flip the 74,000 and change uh, the resistance, that would be signifying a short to medium term bear market, right? Because then your next major underneath target will be sitting down there at about 59 to 60,000. So those are some of the critical things we're watching. And if you go into the daily time frame, the first thing that you would have to do is cross over some of these long and short term moving averages in the daily time frame and flip about the $89,000 would be your first one by crossing the 50, right? The 50-day moving average is sitting right there. So you would want to flip that if you're looking for things to go bearish. But crypto does, it pumps and pumps heavy, creates new all-time highs in Bitcoin, pumps 6, 7, 1,000%, 10%, 10x in altcoins, and then they give it all back, right? You just don't know where that's going to be. But flipping 89,000 and becoming resistance would be an indication that we're short term bearish. But once you flip 74,000, if that did happen at a 30% clip to the downside from its high, that would signify at least a medium term bear market, right? To where we could test 60,000. And now, if we get into some of the most important coins, if we look at Bitcoin dominance, you can see Bitcoin dominance still rising. As we start to get a sell off, people sell out of their altcoins. And even if Bitcoin's falling, they will pump and put it back into Bitcoin because they feel like that's the safe haven of crypto. We're now approaching the 58.55% after we hit a recent lull during the recent late November into early December. We came down to the 54.52% when the altcoins were rallying. If we look at, we'll start with XRP, or we'll start with XLM. And as you do know, I've been short term to medium term bearish ever since back here, where we had the up and sideways consolidation. And again, look at the volume. We have the falling volume. So if we go over this, we had pumping price, right? If you look at the beginning of this from the Trump, pumping price, pumping volume, bullish, all the way into about there. Then we started to have a up and sideways consolidation after that. Let's get rid of that. Then if you look at from about the November the 24th, right around Thanksgiving, we started to have us drastically declining in the daily volume. And then look what we had in the price. We had a sideways and up consolidation right here, which got me short to medium term bearish after a 7 or 8x return. And we started putting these moving averages on here in the daily time frame, and they just so happen to coincide. We had our last major pump top at 42 cents, and then the wicks up, and then traded sideways. We put the 34 cents, the 25 cents, and the 19 cents, and we said if we flip these short term and especially get below uh, the blue between the 25 and the 23 cents, that would be medium term bear market, right? But right now we're still in correction phase where I feel like we had a good callback here by saying in this range from the 45 to when we topped out at 60 cents in the 50s and 55 mid 50s we sat for several weeks. We've been short the medium term bearish. Watch any daily video for the last uh, probably approaching 21 days now. We've been short to medium term bearish, even after we've had some big pump ups after big dumps. And our next major target on this correction phase is 34 cents. And then we could even dip down to 25 cents before there would be if it did get down here, then I think there'd be a ferocious rally, maybe back up to 35 or even 40 cents before we continue down. But I am still short to medium term correction or bearish right now, seeing if this is going to continue to correction phase and then flip back bullish, or if we're going to flip medium term bear market, right? And that's what we're going to continue to watch. And these are our three major targets that we're watching. The volume is still declining. Eventually, the volume will come back in. But the key is when this volume spikes back in, does it spike back in bearish and it's all sell volume and it accelerates the decline? Or does it come in bullish and have a big pump back up from, say, a potential 23, 24 cents all the way up to 34 cents or even higher, right? So that's what we're watching in the short term, coming back down to 34 cents and potentially over the next few weeks, even the 25 cents. And to get to the moving average would be a 44% correction, which is healthy in a bull market in crypto. But if we come all the way to the next one, that's nearly a 60% flush and almost giving back all these gains. And that's something that I'm watching out for to see if we flip into a bear market, right? Because a bear market can still have a nice pump and reactionary pump after you confirm a bear market, but then it usually trends down and sideways with up and down pumps in a range for several months to a year and a half, potentially 2 years. And that's something that we're watching out for if this is going to play out like so many of these other pumps. If we look back in the chart, but we'll look back in the chart on XRP because they all do the same thing. The same thing with XRP, if you look at it. We had the pumping price and the pumping volume all the way up until about the first couple of days of December, and then look what happened. The volume has fallen off the map, and the mean is that orange line, and then the daily candles are right in here. And look how low these daily candles have gotten. And we know a pumping price and a pumping volume is bullish. A sideways or up consolidation with crashing volume is bearish, right? And look at this healthy candles that were up there. And then look at where we're at now. It's reduced by 95 or 98%. And what spikes we do get are red, which are sell volume. So we've been short-term bearish since we topped out at 291 and started consolidating sideways. And again, our first target that we did have that phenomenal bounce off of last week on about December the 10th or December the 9th, we had a 35, 38% move from the $1.90 all the way back up to almost 260. But now we're trending down. And if we come back to the $1.90, you're more than likely going to break it. And then my underneath targets are $1.68, $1.25 at the 100-day moving average in blue, and then the 95 cents, which is just about the 200-day moving average in green. But if we flip the $1.25 and confirm it down, what I mean by confirm it down, and these will trade up and down, but if we come below it, say we bounce off the 200 and spike up real quick, and then we get confirmed and we start to trade and breach again, that's confirming below it. And that would be signifying maybe a bear market in XRP. And then we would have to look at targets that are a little bit lower, maybe going back to that old friend that was there for about 2 years, that top part of that blue trading range of the 69 cents. Not saying it's going to happen, but if you look at history, we can remember when we had this big blow off top at $1.93 with the Elon Musk. So that is a double top where we're at now in the Jeff Bezos, where all these other crypto gurus and fleece heisters and shysters on YouTube and in the sphere were saying that XRP, especially by now, because this was the springtime of 2021, and we were telling you we're going to go into an extended multi-year bear market, and we did. The rest of 21, 22, into 23. Uh, we were in a 2.5 to nearly 3 year bear market, and then we started to turn around in early spring of 2024 and had our next bull market, but we haven't made a new high yet. We came up to our uh, we actually did breach the $1.93. I was thinking of something else. And we did have a ferocious bull market here, but we did accurately call the multi-year bear market that was going to be there. I was very unpopular at the time, but notice what happened here. We had the price pumping, and then the price had a big dip, and then a huge rally, and then it traded sideways and down as the volume continued down. And then we had the big flush, right? And then we traded essentially sideways for 2.5 years. Sometimes we were at 25, 29, 30 cents. Other times we were at 75, 80 cents, saw back to 35, 40 cents, all in that range from about 30 cents to about 50 cents played a major key area in the range. But we accurately called that the same thing as if you go way, way back left when we spiked all the way up to $3.38, the old all-time high that is still sitting back there over 5 years and counting from 2018. Actually, 6.5, approaching 7 years now. We did have the big flush and we did have a 2.5 year bear market, right? So is that something that we're going to see again? That's something that I'm watching out for, and I just want you to pay attention for. And don't get bought into the hype train. Don't get bought into the fleecers. And understand this could, after a nearly 8x return in about 4 or 5 weeks, this could start to turn bearish. Could we still make a run at that 335 all-time high and break it and then go to 5? Yes. But I'm just letting you know that the underneath targets in an extended correction slash bear market could take place. Does that mean we have to come back down to 30 cents? No. But does that mean we could come down to like a 60 cents? Yes. And even potentially lower depending on how severe a bear market got. So those are all things that I want you to continue to pay attention to. And that is for all of the coins, the ISO coins, all of them. They all pump and then they all dump. And then you got to buy them after the dump and ride a pump. Whether it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years, you consolidate and accumulate when they're down. And then you ride the pump, right? Because they all do it. And most of these coins, besides a few, haven't broke all-time highs and really haven't even come close, even though they're up 6, 7, 8, 9, 10x, right? In a lot of these coins. But I'm not calling for a drastic bear market yet, but I am saying it's something to note, to pay attention to, that it is a distinct possibility that more of a healthy correction slash short-term bear market could be in effect. And we're going to have to keep watching it. The same with Algo. We're coming to that critical 35 cents. And if we break that critical 35 cents, you are very likely to come back to the bottom part of this red support resistance zone at 23 cents. And even though this thing had a phenomenal move from its November the 8th low at about 10 cents, all the way up here, it ran up 5x, right? At its peak, and now it's starting to come down after a sideways consolidation. XDC is the same thing, but if we zoom out to XDC in the weekly, you can see we're way off the all-time high. We were still, I mean, we got pretty close, but we were still at its peak to its peak. We were about 78% from its all-time high, even though we pumped up from its low, recent low of 350%. And that's something that we got to pay attention to, right? Are we going to be in another one of these phases where we pump up like this and then trade down and sideways with a couple of big return rallies for 6 months or a year? Or are we going to just have a nice 30 to 50% correction, stabilize, and then these altcoins start to just blow off top all-time highs? That's something that I'm going to continue to watch and pay attention for you guys. Please like, subscribe, and share. Peace and love.